welcome everyone. This is Otto Let's Talk podcast. But this time, it's the sports edition. We're going to do something a bit different, and we're going to talk about some sports. It's a bit close to me and Al. We have these conversations all the time. I'm going to pass you over to the host, the main man himself.
And that is me. It's Audio Geek London. Yeah, we're going to do a little bit something different this time. See how it goes. See how it works. We have these chat as my pal says. We have these chats all the time. So there's no, why not just air these chats? We will normally be joined by Chris, but Chris is currently plugging corks in the holes in his ceiling, to my knowledge.
That's what he tells us.
Underwater. I'm not quite sure, but he'll join us.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
man is a scuba diver. Man is a scuba diver in his spare time. So
we'll see what happens there. Right, let's have a little bit of recap what the football we've had over the past week. So let's start with the Premiership. So Wolves and Leeds was the first game we had on Friday. I watched that game. Wolves won it by a goal to nil. I'd struggle to say that Wolves are back on track. They still looked pretty poor. Neto was their bright spot for all of that. And I think the problem with Leeds is they are that kind of team where I think this swashbuckling style works.
Bro, they win or lose.
Majority of the time, but you come up against a couple of teams where it just doesn't seem to work. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is a bad loss for Leeds. I think that just happens, really. And Wolves weren't that great. It was an own goal in the end. I think Traore cut in and hit off the keeper from off the bar. So not the greatest game in the world.
And I believe that's his first goal of the season, isn't it? His first goal of the season.
Well, it's not even his.
Well, it wasn't his, yeah, but he's got no assist either, has he? He's had no assist this season either. Compared to what he had last time, his output this year has been very disappointing for Wolves.
I'm not sold on him.
To be fair, with Leeds, they win or lose. They win or lose. Leeds win or lose. Traore's output this year has been quite poor. Remember, there was talks of him going back to Barca. Talks of Tottenham being linked with him as well last summer for a lot of money as well. But he hasn't really performed this year. But has Wolves performed at all this season? Neto's probably been the only one on their team that's risen in stock.
Yeah, I'm not really impressed with him. Another drab game was Southampton-Chelsea. That finished 1-1. What wasn't drab was Minamino's finish, which he asked a few of those Chelsea players to sit down, and they abided by that request, and he just flicked it in. And then possibly Chelsea's best player at the moment, Mason Mount, pops up with a penalty. Again, not much to say about Chelsea. I think it's very hard to make any decisions in terms of what you can say about Chelsea. I think it's way too early in the process to be looking and saying they're bad, they're poor, they've been improved. I think just let it settle. I mean, they're currently drawing with Atletico Madrid at the moment, and they've looked the better team. So, I think the jury's still out on Chelsea.
What do you think about Tuchel taking Hudson-Odoi off after bringing him on?
I had a podcast. It was the Guardian podcast talk about it today, and I kind of agreed with something that they said, which I don't know really where you sit with this. I mean, yes, the idea was he did that to send a message. I find it very difficult to accept, like they said on the podcast, would he have done the same thing to a Christensen? Would he have done the same thing to a Azpilicueta sort of thing? And I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have done that to Mason Mount if Mason Mount had done that. I don't think he would have done that to Timo Werner or Kai Havertz if they had showed the same lack of application. Now, look, if his argument is the application that he put in for the time he was on was poor, then fine. That's your decision as a manager. Sean Dyche did the same thing the week before, Robbie Brady. I can't argue it. I just kind of, I don't know, with my skeptics hat on, young, flashy black boy, footballer, doesn't do what he should be doing.
You're going there. Are you going there? You're going there.
I don't know. No, I just think people like Callum Hudson-Odoi, they kind of fit in that kind of package, don't they? Like Pogba and Lingard,
Zaha.
They kind of all Zaha, they all kind of fit in that flashy young, black guy kind of mold. And sometimes I think it's a lot easier to find fault in what they do because people don't like the way they they present themselves really. And I just think Callum Hudson-Odoi you're forgetting he was Tuchel's darling only a
Well, he
week or
still
two
is. I
ago.
was about to say he's one of these.
He was
That's one of
praising
these.
how well he'd.
One of these Donnies.
But a darling that he put on and took off in the same game. I don't know. I just question if Mason Mount had done the same thing. I don't know. Like I said, I'm being very skeptical here. I'm not necessarily making any judgments. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I just feel like it was a little bit harsh
from my side
on the guy. But
I actually thought it was a good move. If I'm honest, the thing is, it's consistency in it. We speak about consistency a lot on our podcast. If he does the same thing, if Tino Werner comes on off the bench and does the same thing, will he draw him off? If he does that, then it's consistency. Then yeah, okay, cool, it's fine. But for me, it was all right. I thought it was a good little message to send out to young players, isn't it? And to any player. If you're not playing well, I'm out for bringing you on as a sub, I can take you off.
Well, this is my point, though, isn't it? It's consistency. Are you going to be able to do that throughout your team when Kovacic does it? Are you going to be able to do that when Giroud does it? Then you start to set a standard. And that standard is anytime you're playing poorly and I've subbed you on, I'm going to sub you off. And if you don't maintain that consistency, then unfortunately it does go down to an intentional slight on Callum Hudson-Odoi. But anyway, I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I'm not necessarily saying that is what he did. I don't know. I think it was that opinion that I heard today of how he wouldn't have done that to a Mount or an Azpilicueta that made me think, I don't know. And they weren't making the suggestion it was a young black boy thing. I just kind of felt a little bit like, yeah, like if it was somebody else like a media darling like Mason Mount, would he have been brave enough to do that? I don't know. Anyway, I digress. I'm not ever going to talk about Burnley, West Brom.
No, bruv. That was actually a very entertaining 0-0.
That was 0-0.
No. That was entertaining 0-0, bruv. To be fair, West Brom should have got a penalty.
The entertaining part of it is that there was a red card and that was about it.
No. They should have got a penalty, bruv. I actually watched the game. They should have got a penalty. West Brom, or was it Burnley?
From what I saw that game wasn't really worth watching.
No, it was the last half an hour was...
West Brom got Ajayi sent off.
Yeah, and then should have had a penalty. They should have had a penalty. And VAR, once again, cocked up.
Okay, let's keep it moving because we've got lots to get through. So then we moved on to the Merseyside derby, and I kind of dipped in and out of that. I'm going to keep my professional hat on and not talk about how much I enjoyed the result, but I'm going to let you, Gravy, tell us about that game.
Yeah, because that was a game I actually was selected to watch. To be fair, it started off with a corker, didn't it? 2 minutes in, Richarlison. And it was a great ball by James, by the way. What a ball. Eye of the needle, through two defenders, bang, goal. Great goal. I think Richarlison's getting a bit of a habit of scoring against Liverpool as well, actually. I think he scored in the last derby, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think he did. But yeah, again, Liverpool's woes, they continue. It was a good display by Everton. The part I didn't like was the way Everton were celebrating like they just lifted the trophy.
I take that one. I disagree with you on that one. I can see exactly why you would. Now, you've got to think about, these are your closest rivals. There are not many cities in the world that had whole teams that are in the top flight of their leagues in such close proximity. And I've been to Liverpool before, and when I tell you the distance between Anfield and Goodison Park is genuinely down the end of a road. They're so close. It's such a rivalry. Your neighbours have been arguably the best team in the world for the past 2 years, and then they suddenly start to show a poor patch of form. Then you go to their ground and you stick it to them, mate. I think for those Everton fans, those Everton players, I think they deserve to have as much celebration as they can. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've always thought about it as a manager. I think I'm somebody who would always, make it very clear. You haven't got time to be celebrating. We take the win, we move on, and not to rest on your laurels. And I think I'd be very much like that. But in those kind of scenarios, I think it's very hard to dissuade them from celebrating. It's a big win for them.
Well, it's
Yeah.
their first victory. It's their first victory in like
Yeah,
20 odd years, isn't it?
it's a
Twenty-two
big
years, I
win for
think it
them.
was.
I can see why then.
I don't know, brother. For me, like we don't celebrate like that. I'm not saying not be happy about it, but it was a little. I don't know. I don't know. It was a bit over the top for me. But good result either way. And Liverpool again. What was that? Their first back four defeats, sorry, in a row. I think since
Of
like
some
1960
nonsense since,
something,
you know,
something
well
like that.
before the Premier League even started. You know, I think
Yeah,
it
which
it
is
is.
crazy. I did say to you and Chris, I did say it wouldn't surprise me if Klopp
Yeah,
resigns. Like, just
no,
remember where you heard it
I
first. You
think,
heard
you
it
know, we'll
first
touch
here.
upon that later on in the pod, and I think, you know, just to preface that, I think what we kind of agreed is, I mean, you felt that he would. I mean, I think it's all in the wording. I don't think he'll resign as such. I think it would be like, maybe if anything, if he does go, it would be some sort of mutual consent based on him, you know, being of not, you know, sound body or mind because of his grieving at the moment, and he might want to take a break.
Yeah, wait. For people who don't know, listeners that don't know, Klopp has just lost his mum. I believe it was natural cause. It wasn't COVID, was it,
Um,
Al? I know she passed. I don't know
I can't
what she
remember
died of.
exactly, but I know she was ill. He knew she was ill. She actually passed away in January, and he wasn't able to be with her during her last sort of moments, and he wasn't able to fly back to Germany for the funeral. So he's kept quiet about that,
And to
and
be honest,
he's, you know, I think, I'm not, you know, being a United fan, I haven't got a lot to say
and
good
to be
about Liverpool, but I've got to give him his credit there. He's not used that as an excuse. He's barely mentioned it, and he soldiered on. That's respectful to respect to him.
no, well, that'd be difficult for anyone. And if he did resign, I don't think anybody could begrudge him that because obviously he's not had time to grieve over what's happened to the loss of his mum. But I think football takes a secondary thing when something like that happens, and I don't think I could.
Well,
Well, I don't know. The
well,
flip
that's the
side is you
problem,
stay
though.
busy, you forget, and it keeps your
Football
mind off
doesn't
it.
take
But
the break, and that's what the biggest criticism is. Because, what, you know, when things go badly or things go wrong, we are almost allowed as fans and pundits to take digs and sharp knives out and attack these managers and players and tell them how rubbish they are. And in reality, if any of those managers or players come out and say, "Do you know what? I'm depressed," or "Do you know what? I'm missing my family," or "Do you know what? My mind's not on the job because my daughter's unwell." If they come out and say that, they get vilified for making excuses. So actually, you know, lots of journalists will talk about lots of stories of how they've met managers and they've gone into press conferences and been torn apart, and they've seen those same managers 10 minutes later in a quiet corner of the stadium crying because they'd lost their sister 2 weeks before, but they're not allowed to say it, because if they do say it, it's almost making excuses, and they're not really allowed to be human. And I think that's probably why I look at Klopp and say, for you to have gone through that and to only have lost a couple of games is quite heroic. And let's be honest, they didn't lose the games because they were managed poorly. They lost the game because those players at the moment are just not sure what they're doing. They're not playing
no, they're not
themselves. But
playing
anyway,
themselves.
I think
I do think it does squash that point of them being the greatest
yeah,
Premier
and
League
don't worry,
team of all time. That's
we will
definitely
cover
out with.
that. We will cover that
That's
shortly.
gone. I don't want to hear. As an Arsenal fan, I know I don't have much to speak about, but that locks that argument straight off.
With
Go
we'll
on, Al.
come back to
Continue.
that. Fulham beat Sheffield United, which is a good result for Scott Parker, but obviously, I think with Sheffield United, I thought they might be able to pull something out of the bag here, but I think even, you know,
Thank God they're not.
for me, I think, you know, when you got Chris Wilder admitting defeat and saying, you know, thankfully we won't be here for long for you to keep beating us like this, that kind of defeat's attitude tells me they're down and they're done.
To be fair, with Sheffield United, the reason why I did say thank God was I had a little conversation with Al about this a few weeks ago, and I said if Sheffield United stay up, I'll eat my boxer shorts. They're not staying up, so I can thankfully say I will not be eating brief them. But to be fair, they're just playing bad. They don't have a goal scorer. If you look any team, you need goals. They got man like Billy Sharp, who, bless his little cotton socks, is not a Premier League striker. And what is he, 34? And I think is it McCulloch?
Goldrick.
McGoldrick, sorry, who has never been a out and out goal scorer either. What's happened to Musa?
I don't know. Actually, maybe he might be injured. I think for me,
Because he was their top scorer last season.
I don't know. I just think for me,
Yeah,
what I don't like about McGoldrick, I don't dislike him, but what I don't like about no,
he's
not
a
even that.
championship
What I
player.
don't like about
He's a championship
what people say, it kind of goes into this Firmino argument, right? Now, when everything's going well and these players aren't scoring, these number nines aren't scoring, all you ever hear about, but actually his contribution is different. It's not about the goals he scored, it's his all-round play contribution. For me, it's a poor way of saying this guy doesn't score enough goals. They've said that about McGoldrick his whole career. It's not about the goals, it's what he does. Same about Firmino. It's not about the goals.
He's a striker.
But here's my argument. But when
he's a striker.
When Martial goes down the middle and is on poor form, all I've heard for the past how many weeks is how he's lazy, he's not a number 9, he's not good enough. But yet we can accept that Firmino is their number 9 for one of the best teams in the world, doesn't score enough goals. We accept that people like Eddie McGoldrick scores 2 goals a season, but we say, well, it's not about that, it's about his all-round contribution. But when Martial's not doing it...
Hey, listeners, if you only gathered out,
I'm being honest. I think it's easy for me to talk about teams like Liverpool quite objectively, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of Liverpool, one thing I can sit down and say is any win against them, regardless of what form they're in, is something to behold. That team is something that I've never seen in a long time of what they achieved. But I just think for me, what I'm seeing a lot of now is, and again I'm going to kind of touch on this later. What I'm seeing a lot of now is I think Liverpool represent what our society, how they represent what we want to be represented as society. English grit, hardworking players, good people on and off the pitch, shining examples. So when they're not playing well and they're not doing what they should be, instead of holding these players to account, what people keep doing is keep making excuses for them. They're saying, people argue about the injuries. Do you know that in the same way Liverpool had something like 16 plus
Leicester
16 plus pairings at the back. Leicester have had the same. Leicester have not had their first choice centre backs play together at all season,
and they've not once come out and highlighted it.
There are lots of teams. There are lots of teams that that are just injury ravaged each time they play, and I just think for me, I just want fair is fair. I think United have taken quite a lot of battering. I would argue Arsenal have taken a lot of battering over the past couple of weeks and months. But when Liverpool pour in these abject performances, all we ever hear is, now all of a sudden it's Thiago's fault. Make your mind up, because when Thiago first turned up in the Premiership, my goodness, he was the best midfielder we've ever seen. Now all of a sudden,
he was
Mr. What I don't like about the media. Now all of a sudden, they're not playing well, and they're blaming, the Brazilian foreigner. Like it's not him, it's the team. It's the Robertsons.
It's the whole team.
It's the attitude of the Alexander Arnolds. It's them as a collective. They're not playing well.
I think it may be a case. Maybe Klopp. Look, you're a reflection of your manager. In a job like that, you're a reflection of your manager. It's Klopp's team. He's not mentally in the right headspace at the moment, and I think maybe that energy may be resonating to the team. But then on the flip side, you look at it and think the player should want to step up even more.
Yeah, you want to win it for your manager.
So you want to win it for your manager. So there's that bit. Or it's just a case Liverpool is having a bad season. Do you know what I mean? Like we can't look, like you said, the narrative is what you put out earlier, what you just said. But the way I look at it is Liverpool are like a new album that's just dropped, and everyone's already saying it's the greatest album ever, and they've not even listened to it fully. Let the team go through a couple seasons and see what they can do. Like they had 1-2 good seasons where they ran a few things, and everyone's calling them the greatest of all time. Like, I'm not being funny. I saw someone put a tweet out and it was hilarious. They're like, Man United won the Premier League 4 times in a row or 3 times in a row. Or you've done that 3 times in a row. You've done it like a couple of times. You've done it twice. Yeah. Twitter and that wasn't really about. Social media was about. If that was the case, Man United would probably be the best team of the whole century.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And that's what people will be saying. That would be the narrative. And I think, look, I'm not trying to take the shine off Liverpool, because when Arsenal were doing, when we was the Invincibles, I was acting like I was part of the squad. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get carried away. But when you step back and look at it, and I've had discussion with you before, I would never say that Arsenal one of the greatest Premier League teams. I said we wasn't. I know we're not. And the reason why I said we wasn't was that when we were up the top, we never dominated like United did. Like, we never won back-to-back titles. We never won the Champions League. So for me, we had a good period. We was a very good Premier League team, but I wouldn't say we were one of the greatest. Like, I wouldn't even put us in that argument. Like, but what we done, I don't think we replicated again. But I just think, you know what? Sometimes you've got to step back and just say, like, do you know what? We're not. Liverpool, I think true champions come back, right? So if they lose this title this season, which I think they are, I think Man City are going to win the league this season. If they lose the title, but then next season they come back and win it again, and then defend it and win it after that, then I think we have that argument. Like, boy, are they the greatest team to come back and do it? Will Klopp be head coach?
I think this is the whole point, isn't it? You made this point when we were talking about boxing. People put too much emphasis on not losing and retaining, and actually it's the not losing and the not retaining is the reason why Man City are the beast of what they are now, because they had to go through what they went through last season to realise this ain't no game, this Premier League. This ain't no game.
Even United, United back in the day were the kings of the Premier League. Like, they lost it, they won it back. Do you know what I mean? You look at when they've lost the title, Blackburn Rovers were the first to do it. Do you know what I mean? You won it back the season after. We done it, you won it the season after. You know what I mean? So United have always had that whole grit of, and that's why they go down as one of the best teams in Premier League history under Ferguson. And that look, numbers don't lie, trophies don't lie. And I think you've got to give them respect for that. Liverpool haven't had that success. A lot of Liverpool's success was in the past. And that's what they were living off. A bit not the same to Newcastle, but the whole of you're a big club, but you haven't won anything. Now they've done that, it's a case of coming back and, like, do you know what? Because I think the team does need a rebuild. The front three are aging, and I don't know where the goals are going to come from. That's the problem that Liverpool face. Don't get me wrong, Jota, I think, is one of them. But is Jota going to get you 20, 25 goals a season? I don't know. So you're looking at, and even if you look at the young talents that they sold, what was the young lad they sold to Sheffield United, the striker? He ain't done nothing. And there were big hopes on him. I think they've got a buyback clause on him as well. But they'll be
partaking in it. No,
they won't be activating it. Yeah, but there you go. Again, he hasn't shown anything. So where's Liverpool's goals going to come? And let's be honest, the price of strikers, the only one who everybody would love to have at the moment is Haaland.
But that
100%. But I digress. Again, I'm digressing.
That's a different show altogether. What that comes with. Right, I'm going to wrap up the rest of the Premier League. I'm going to wrap up the rest of Europe. We're going to talk a little bit combat sports, and then we're going to do our predictions moving on next week. So let's wrap up the rest of the Premiership. So West Ham beat Tottenham, and that was a very, 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 very lopsided game. I think initially West Ham started quite well, started quite quickly. Tottenham then actually did show a little bit of fighting spirit, but it was a bit too late, unfortunately for them. Aston Villa lost 2-1 at home to Leicester. Leicester showing that, again, they are absolutely up there in terms of that top four. Maddison picked up a little bit of an injury, but it seems to be okay. Southgate was in the stand, so 2 Englishmen scoring. That's really, really good. No Jack Grealish, he was injured, and he was... not only was he injured, but there was a bit of furore surrounding that, because ultimately that was leaked to the press. So they did an inquiry at Aston Villa to work out whose loose lips sunk the ship, and you know what it was down to how the media found out about Aston Villa.
How?
I kid you not, because the FPL deadline was on Friday. Somebody had realised half of the Villa team and the backroom staff had all taken Grealish out of their team, and that is how it was leaked to.
What fantasy
FPL.
football?
So right, anyway, the game I had to watch,
because I left them in.
The game I had to watch was the Arsenal City game. Pretty standard. I think we all knew City was going to win that game. I don't think Arsenal did that badly. I don't think they made a poor show of it. I just think that's just where they are. That's where City are. I think if you were given 1-0 at the beginning of the game, I think you would have taken it.
Yeah, I'd have taken it. To be fair, I didn't watch the game because City always do us. But when you text me saying, you know what, I meant to watch this game and I missed the first 3 minutes and they're already scored, I was thinking we're going to get absolutely
No,
battered here.
I think
Like,
you
so
take that. I think United beat Chelsea. United. I'm watching Chelsea. United beat Newcastle 3-1. Again, that score doesn't really show what that game was all about. United once again looked poor, and they did look poor. I think it might be the
another
insurgents in
penalty.
Europe. It might be like a lot of the teams they're getting tired. I think it's down to the fact that Ollie has put his faith in some players that aren't really performing at the moment. So what? Oh,
Like who?
the list is endless. So you've got Maguire and Lindelof. So he doesn't want to lose face of those two players. You've got Fred, who Pastor Fred, who at one point was a shoo-in to be picked in that team. But you're at home to Leicester. You're at home to Newcastle. Why have you got two defensive midfielders on the pitch? That shows you the intent straight away. And Fred just didn't look good enough in that middle. I think he just needs to have a little bit of a rest. Unfortunately, McTominay was injured, so he couldn't play. And just the decision to play Martial. And the decision he did get right was playing Dan James, and that worked for him. But again, we'd be here for the rest of the pod if I got into that. And I've got different opinions on Martial. He's not playing well. To sum it up, he's not playing well enough. He shouldn't have started. Right, and then Crystal Palace beat Brighton 2-1, and Leeds this evening beat Southampton 3-0. Goals for Bamford, Dallas, and the inform Rafinha. So if we take a quick look, 3-0.
What was the score for that Leeds game?
3-0.
Cool. Can I just say one thing, Al, before you move on? 2 points on touch on. One, the Martial thing. I know that Alan Shearer has come out and criticised Martial, saying that he doesn't score enough goals. Just linking that back to what you said about Firmino. And back to the West Ham Spurs game. Just want to shout out, big shout Jesse Lingard, because he was a player going through a lot of crap that no one knew about and kept it to himself. He's come out and he looks like he's playing again. He's enjoying his football. I just wanted to shout that out because you said it earlier about how we don't know what these players are going through. Lingard was another player that was going through a lot of personal issues when he was at United. He's gone to West Ham and he's come out and said, I'm enjoying my football again. And it is showing on the pitch. What's that? 4 goals in 3 games, I think, for Lingard at the moment. But yeah, Al, continue.
Yeah, so looking at the table, City sit at the top, 10 points ahead, with United and Leicester in second and third, only split by a point. West Ham getting the nosebleeds up in fourth, Chelsea down to fifth, Liverpool down to sixth on the same points as Everton, who are in seventh. Spurs prop up the table in ninth, right in the middle with Leeds. Arsenal take a drop down to 11th. And if you look at the bottom three, it's Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield United. Newcastle only really 3 points ahead of Fulham, looking like they're going to be pulled into that as well.
Who's your free to go down now?
Oh, my free to go down. I'm going to go for Sheffield United, West Brom, and I'm going to go for Newcastle. Actually, I think Fulham will do it.
I'm going to say how it is now is the 3 that are going to go down. I think Sheffield United are already relegated. West Brom as well. I think the last place is between Newcastle and Fulham, but I actually think Fulham will go down. Again, I just don't think they've got enough goals in them. Before we continue, just don't forget to like, share, follow, and leave a comment if you're enjoying it. A thumbs up does help. And if you do follow and leave a comment, it does help with the algorithms for us to get out there to a bigger reach. Remember that we are on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcast, and one called Overcast, because I looked at our numbers the other day, and a big shout to the US, because that is our biggest listening country. It's the US.
Okay.
Second is the UK, and then third place is Ireland. So yeah, with a big shout out to the US. Obviously, they're liking my sexy UK accent. So yeah, Al, go on.
You definitely digress there. Right, so let's have a look at Serie A. So Serie A is looking actually quite nice at the moment. Juventus have popped up with a 3-0 win against Crotone. Lukaku proved emphatically that he was the king of Milan in the reverse fixture.
Yes, and he set a new record as well.
Well, for me, I just think, he must have enjoyed that for having, shouted halfway across the pitch to Zlatan Ibrahimovic because of their brawl the other day. He reminded him who was really king. So for Big Rom, I'm glad to see that. So looking at their table, actually, it looks quite interesting because Inter Milan have only just now sort of stretched away from AC, who were leading the table for quite a while. Juventus looking in third with their new manager Pirlo, not looking so great for them. Atalanta, who are probably the team that I like the best in that league, are sitting in fifth. And if you go all the way back down to like seventh, you're seeing Napoli. So I'm not sure how long Gattuso is going to hold on to his job. And some sad news for you, Gravy. Propping up the table in 19th is Parma.
Yeah, Palmer on my team, man. But yeah, I think Lukaku he set a new record. I think the first player in, again, wartime statistics to score in 4 or 5 back-to-back Milan derbies.
Right.
So
good
so
for
like, good on
Big
him.
Rom. Let's look at La Liga. The Liga is looking also very tight. Sociedad, who got thumped by United, actually came back and thumped Alaves for the same score. Bilbao draw with Villarreal. Valencia picked up a win. Real Madrid are putting some pressure on Atletico, who are leading La Liga, but actually lost on the weekend.
Yeah,
They
actually, you know what?
lost
I
on the
actually
weekend,
want
which was
Atletico.
quite surprising.
I want Atletico to win that league only because it will show Barcelona that they shouldn't have got rid of Suarez so early. I think there's a knee-jerk reaction, and I know they might have to pay some money. I think the deal was, I think even with if he wins them the league, I still think it was a small deal what they paid.
Yeah,
For
initially
Suarez.
they had let him go for free, trying to get him off the wage bill. Realised that Atletico wanted him, so to save face, they negotiated a fee. It was nothing, but ultimately they're looking like they're probably going to take that league. With Barcelona drawing 1-1 with Cadiz, and that was a last-minute penalty to get that there. But looking at that table, Madrid have a game in hand, are only 4 points behind Atletico, with Sevilla in third, Barcelona in fourth, and Sociedad in fifth. Right, so let's have a very brief look at Champions League. I'm just going to go over the fixtures. So we've got Atletico and Chelsea who are playing now with a 0-0 draw. Bayern are smashing Lazio away 4-1, I believe. And then tomorrow we've got Atalanta and Real and Mönchengladbach and City. That's the state of the Champions League at the moment. I'm going to have a little quick chat about the WSL. For those who don't know, that's Women's Super League. So England played Northern Ireland today, smashed them 6-0. Ellen White got a hat-trick, nearly in the first half, but 2 in the first half, 1 in the last. It was the first game for Higa Risa, who is the caretaker boss until Serena Wiegman, the Dutch coach, comes in. And it was their first game in charge. And the reason why I'm mentioning this game, really, because there weren't any WSL games this week, but they were well expected to win. They were expected to win by a large margin. But actually, what was quite good that I saw on the BBC is that they had an article which they'd written about the lack of BAME players represented in the league, in the national team. And just a quick synopsis of it, I think the point they were making was in the past few Euros Giroud has just scored an overhead kick, which has been disallowed. The reason why I bring it up is because in the past few tournaments, they've had something like 16, 17, 18%, 20% of the squad of BAME players. And this was one of the first times because of Demi Stokes of City and who was the other one? Demi Stokes of City and Nikita Paris of Lyon. Because they weren't in the squad, it was an entirely white squad.
Yeah, but is there, on the flip side, is there actually any good players that should be in the team that weren't in the team?
Well, no.
Before we no.
I'm
just saying, like,
that wasn't what the article was about. The article was the fact that the very fact that there has been a diminishing amount of BME players constantly being represented by England. We're looking at the fact that why aren't those players of BME background at a youth level, why are they not getting through in the same way as their white counterparts? Because as you can see in the male game, the proportion of amount of BME, mainly black players, is quite high. So, we know what our society is represented by.
Yeah, but I think that's also, I think that also may be a case that women's football's just recently turned professional. So stuff like this, it's a career, isn't it? If my daughter wanted to play, I don't have any kids, but if she wanted to play professional football, women's football, it's not the fact that it's women's football. I'm just like, is there money in it? Like, can you get paid doing something better, doing something else?
Well, that's the point. Is they are. Paid, so. But this is the article. This is what the article was saying. The article was saying that the further we go back, the more black players were representing England. And what we're saying now is it's getting less and less. And they're arguing it's getting less and less because the outreach these clubs are putting into getting those types of players who are living in, potentially quite, inner city areas, and they're not being reached because these are the families who have to, drive their player who plays for maybe Watford women and has to go and drive them up to play for England, which is halfway up the country, and because these people are working and don't have the opportunities to do it, they're not really being helped. But anyway, that's an article that's worth reading. It's on the BBC website. It was an all-white squad until Ebony Salmon got called up because they had an injury. She's a mixed race, I think. Ebony Salmon, she's mixed race. She plays for Bristol City. Young, 17, looks really good. Got a debut, didn't score unfortunately. Ella Toone scored, who plays for United, so well done for her. And then we can move on to combat sports. So
yeah, before we go on to that, I just want to let listeners know. Obviously, this is our new spin-off of the Otto Let's Talk. We are coming back for season 2 for that as well. But if you are a footballer listener, male or female, and want to join, we are got a guest set for each week that we're trying to do. So we're looking to represent every club in the Premier League. So hit us up on our email or hit us up in the DMs, and we shall try and get you on. Obviously, you're gonna need a decent mic, and you can jump on and be part of this. Every week we're going to rotate a fan, so yeah, look out for that.
And that includes if you're a fan of Chelsea women or West Ham women, because ultimately, I do like to do my best to promote the women's game, as a father or a daughter who I desperately want to play football. I've taken a lot of interest in the women's game, and there are a lot of good players and there are a lot of good teams out there, and I don't think there is much really, really, really online of this kind of content and material about that. There's a few that I do watch. Faker Others is somebody who I follow a lot. She does a lot of podcasts as well. So, if I can give a 5-minute shine to women's football, that then takes somebody down to go and watch somebody, I've done my bit. But that's a football roundup. We're going to go into combat sports. I'm just going to very quickly go over UFC, and then Grave, you can spend your time talking about boxing. So UFC, we had an event on the weekend just gone. Curtis Blades got knocked out by Derek Lewis. It was quite horrible to watch. I think that was definitely an upset. It's been put down as one of the top 5 upsets of all time. That completely shakes the division up because now we've got heavyweight champion Mojicic, and he is fighting Francis Ngannou, and the winner from that's supposed to get John Jones. So that's all messed everything up with Derek Lewis coming and get that knockout. Then the standout event is next weekend, the 6th. Is it this weekend? The 6th. Well, the next one coming up has 3 title fights in one session. You've got I think it's the bantamweight title that's up, which is Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is an absolute beast. He is an American guy, and he's one of your guys. He's Jamaican descent. So he's fighting for the title. Megan Anderson is fighting Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is an absolute pound-for-pound beast, male or female. She's an absolute beast. She's a two division champion. She's got Megan Anderson, who is a lot taller than her, about 6 foot. Amanda Nunes is only about 5'8", so it's good to see what power versus reach does. And then you've got the big one, Jan Blachowicz fighting Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya is a current middleweight champion and it's kind of like your Conor McGregor. He's a Kiwi-born Nigerian. He's a Nigerian-born Kiwi who is all about the glitz and glamour and the coolness, and he's fighting Jan Blachowicz, who's just got the heavyweight title. So actually, Israel's gone up in weight to fight, so that's going to be really, really good. I'm looking forward to watching that. It is. It's a very big ask, and I think if he does that, that puts him, for me, it's an amazing thing to do. He's a middleweight to go up to heavyweight. Listen, I don't know about boxing, but I know in UFC there are clear divisions between lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight. Heavyweight fights don't go 5 rounds. Championship fights. Heavyweight rounds don't go 3 rounds because
That's
someone
because they
gets
hit
knocked
hard.
out. Someone
hit
gets
hard.
knocked out in heavyweight division. Light heavyweight is kind of the one where you're like, sorry, so I'll rephrase that. Light heavyweight is what, Adesanya is going up to light heavyweight, not heavyweight. He's going up to light heavyweight to fight Blachowicz. And, going up, the further you go up in those divisions, the harder they hit. Middleweights tend to go 3-4 rounds and you might get a knockout. But when you start hitting light heavyweight and heavyweight, those fights only last a couple of rounds because the knockouts are horrible. So I think if Adesanya, who's quite a dynamic fighter, if he can step up and keep the dynamic fighting style that he's got, and up against Blachowicz, who's just a hard hitter, I can see him taking points on that one. So yeah, that'll be next weekend. So I look forward to watching
Unfortunately,
that.
I'm not big up on my UFC. It's not a sport that I follow, but I know Chris Otto Snells is a big UFC boxing fan. I'm a boxing fan. I'm not armchair fan.
Tell us about your boxing. You got 5 minutes.
So yeah, this week we had a lot of fights this weekend. Actually, it was actually quite nice. I was busy watching boxing. Obviously, in the UK, the big one was Josh Kelly versus David Amanisian for the European title, which was, before the fight, was actually a 50-50 fight. And I'm speaking to a lot of like I said, I'm an armchair boxing fan. I've done a little bit of boxing and realized that I couldn't take a punch, so I didn't go that far. But yeah, Amanisian was probably my slight favorite. And before the match, I did tweet I thought it was going to go 12 rounds. Josh Kelly got stopped in 6 and his corner threw the towel in, which is probably the right thing to do. Before this fight, there was obviously, for those who don't know, there was a big rivalry between Conor Benn and Josh Kelly, and the whole sort of lineup was, if he came through this, that would be a big UK showdown between them two. And Sky Sports were very clever by having having Ben in the commentary to watch the fight. It was a very good fight. For the first 3 rounds, Josh Kelly showed his slick boxing skills. He clearly has ability. He is big at the weight, but there was always rumors circling in the boxing community that he had no tank, that he couldn't go 12 rounds. Ultimately, when he got stopped, it did look like he gassed out. He did have a bizarre, nasty cut at the back of his head. It was really weird. It didn't seem to be a clash of heads or anything like that. And I've heard some people say he may have had a bursted blood vessel or something in the back of his head, but there was a lot of blood streaming down his head at the end of the third, I think it was. And you could tell that he, obviously as a boxer, when you get injured like that, you have to learn how to cope in that sort of situation. I don't think he's ever been in that situation of being badly cut. I think we saw that with Tyson Fury when he fought Otto Wallin. He struggled with the cut, which is quite nasty. So it's coming through that. And I think he's cornered on the right thing. Josh is still young, so he can come back again. And I think his corner chucking the towel in was probably the Adam Booth chuck the towel in, which I thought was actually the right thing to do. He can come back again. It was a good fight. On the that was actually a good bill. On the undercard, there was Florian Marcoux, who had his battle with Ryan Charlton. That was another good fight, a bit of a grudge match. Obviously, Marcoux, after he got knocked down as well in the fight, got up and won. And he actually called out. Actually, that was another corner stoppage. So his corner, Ryan Charlton's corner, chucked the towel in for that one as well. And I think there may have been a lot more heat on these fights this weekend because of what happened to Josh Warrington the week before, where a lot of people were saying maybe the corner should have chucked the towel in when he did stumble back. In fact, the referee helped him back to his corner after he got knocked down and lost as well. So yeah, I think it was the right thing in that case, chucking the towel in as well. But Ryan Charlton gave a good account of himself. I actually thought he worked to the body really well. His body was really well. But Florian Marcoux does move on. And obviously, he's a massive following in the Albanian community. So he will bring numbers in. So that was a good victory. And obviously, he called out Conor Benn after the fight. And Conor Benn was like, look, I've got bigger fish to fry, which he's got a fight coming up very soon as well, Conor Benn. And then obviously, across the pond, we had Adrian the Problem, or should he call himself now?
AB.
all about the billions. He came back on a comeback fight. And
apparently it was underwhelming from what I heard.
It was very underwhelming. He struggled through. The thing about Adrian Broner, and I had discussion with Al earlier in the week about boxing is no different to any other sport. If you haven't played football for a year, you're not going to come back and do 90 minutes on your first time out. You've got to be match fit. like a bit with the Josh Warrington fight. He hadn't had a fight in over 12 months. So maybe approaching 14, 15 months. Josh Warrington hasn't had a fight. Fought a young Mexican kid. He had 4 or 5 fights in a year. It's sort of clear if you're not match fit and not ready for it, ring rust, you're going to get probably beat up or it's going to be a hard night. It was the latter for Warrington. He got beat up. Adrian Broner has not won a boxing fight in 4 years. He hasn't had a fight in 2 years. So for him to come out and expect it to be razzle dazzle wasn't ever going to happen. I always knew he was going to go the distance unless he fought some fat, overweight Dorman, which he didn't. He fought someone who came to give the rumble, but it was. I knew it wasn't going to be the glitz and glamour by Broner. Is he finished? The thing about Broner, he wasn't dedicated to his craft. He's got a lot of issues. Like, I know I watched another podcast, Boxing by Aid. That's another very good boxing podcast. And he was saying that Broner got his car shot up not too long ago. So if Broner's not boxing, he been doing something naughty. He's that sort of person. And his interview sort of summed it up for me because apparently Adrian Broner was very close to being bankrupt a couple years ago. And his interview after the fight, he said, I only had $13 in my account. I've nearly been broke. So tonight, I'm going to pop bottles and go ham. But Monday, it's all about business. That just sums up AB for you. It's not about the millions.
I'm pretty sure he said he's going to be pop bottles, writing checks and having some SEX.
Well, there you go. So maybe AB stands for almost broke, not all about the billions. But yeah, and then the undercard fight of that was Dominic Brazil versus Otto Wallin. Otto Wallin obviously took Tyson Fury 12 rounds and had a massive cut on Fury as well. And obviously Dominic Brazil, another fighter who got knocked out by Deontay Wilder and also got beat up by Anthony Joshua. He hadn't had a fight again, bordering nearly over 2 years, which was against Broner. Again, look, I said it earlier on, you can't be match fit. Otto Wallin is in the mix. I wouldn't even say Otto Wallin is top 20 in the world in the heavyweights, but he's in the mix. And obviously, I said it to one of my friends that I thought that Brazil would get beat up, and he actually did get beat up over 12 rounds. Could have Wallin taken him out? I thought he could have if he'd have stepped on the pressure. But one thing you can't say, what you can't take away from Brazil, and it's most heavyweights, the last thing to go is your power, and he can bang. But I think Wallin was probably a bit of like, I don't want it. I'm winning comfortably, but I'm going to go in and risk it to get one punch changes a fight. We saw that with Dylan White Povetkin. Talking about Dylan White Povetkin. So sorry, yeah, Otto Wallin did win that on a unanimous point decision. And talking about Dylan White, obviously that fight's been moved to Gibraltar, and I think it's going to happen at the end of March. I think it's March the 27th that fight is going to happen, and that's obviously the rematch with Povetkin. And obviously I can't forget the Mexican sensation, Oscar Valdez. He absolutely smoked a 9-round knockout, and this guy, featherweight, he looks like he might be the next star after Canelo. And obviously Canelo is fighting, I believe it's either this week or the weekend after. He's got a super middleweight clash with Yildirim. I saw the weigh-in today, and I'm not going to lie. Al, I know you're talking about weights and classes and that. Yildirim towers over Canelo. Canelo is tiny, but he's got a lot of power. He towers over him. And Canelo was wearing some questionable tracksuit today with kicks that didn't match. And I was like, boy, all the money in the world, still can't dress, Canelo. Still can't dress. But that is a boxing roundup. I think this weekend there is some fights, actually. Is there fights this weekend? I don't know if the Canelo fights this weekend, but I know I am looking forward to the 20th of March when Lawrence Okolie, the British guy, fights for the WBO cruiserweight title. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think Okolie's going to get the win. But yeah, Al, over to you.
Lovely. Let's have a look at the fixtures for this weekend. Moving on to Monday, I'm going to call out the fixture. You're going to tell me the result. Ready?
All right. Go on.
Man City, West Ham. What's the score?
2-1 City.
West Brom, Brighton.
Brighton 1-0.
Leeds, Aston Villa. It's a tasty game.
3-0.
Oof. Newcastle, Wolves.
1-0 Wolves.
Sounds awful. Crystal Palace, Fulham.
That is a game.
It's a very big game.
I might watch that one this weekend.
That's a big that's a London derby there for you.
I think it's going to be a draw. A 0-0. 0-0.
Leicester Arsenal at the old
Mate.
King Power, old school.
Do you know what?
Taking
I
you
say
to Filbert Street.
1-0 to Leicester, and I'm an Arsenal fan. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Spurs Burnley.
4-0 Burnley. No, joking. Spurs to win 2-0.
Chelsea United at Stamford Bridge.
1-1.
Sheffield United Liverpool at Bramall Lane.
Liverpool 1-0.
And Everton Southampton, that's on Monday at Goodison Park.
Southampton 2-1.
So it is a double game week. We won't go into the double game week because by the time we do another pod, it will, those game weeks will be starting. So we're not going to actually talk about that.
How come you ain't done your prediction?
Because we ain't got time. That's why.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think, and if Chris is in this next time, my goodness, how long are we going to be? So I'm quite conscious, guys, of trying to keep this content quite short because ultimately, if we're going to get people on to talk about their teams and their experiences, we've got no choice but to keep it short and keep it brief. So in closing, I'm going to ask Gravy, I'm going to look at my watch and I'm going to give him 30 seconds to tell me what's wrong with Liverpool. Well, don't start yet. What's wrong with Liverpool in a 30-second blast? Are you ready? Go.
They're just not performing. That's it. End of. Klopp's in a bad place mentally. The team are not performing. It's as simple as that. That's what I'm putting it down to. The players are not stepping up. That's what it is. That's a problem. Don't need more. I'm done. Drop the mic.
Okay. That's your 30 seconds. I'm going to do my 30 seconds. What's wrong with Liverpool? I'm going to go. So I think in synopsis, in review, in summary, what's wrong with them is they have played at 100 miles an hour for 2 years now. And in a time where 100 mile an hour games can't serve you well, 2-3 games in a week and Champions League and all of that, I think the demise of their team, of the proof of where they need to be replaced, those players, those front threes, those Asian players, has been definitely sped up by the fact that they're playing at 100 miles an hour in a time where 100 miles an hour is not going to be good for you. So that's what I think is wrong with Liverpool. So, right, that's our first sports pod. We didn't really get quite enough time to go into Liverpool a bit in depth, but we did talk about it along the way. But, going through all of the week's sport, including the WSL and the international, I didn't even talk about the She Believes Cup. I could have talked about that, but I chose not to. That goal by Giroud, which I said was disallowed against Atletico, actually was checked by VAR and it counts. So Chelsea currently winning away.
Giroud always does the acrobats, man.
And they're currently winning away at Atletico with barely any minutes to go. So with barely any minutes to go into this pod, what do you want to leave your listeners with, your final thought?
Just want to say, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are liking this, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give us the thumbs down. Be honest. But yeah, don't forget, support, like, share, follow. And you know what? If you want to become on this podcast as well, hit us up, DM us, let us know what team you support, and we'll try and fit you on.
Yeah, that's sort of my closing statement as well, really. I really want this to be an interactive pod, really. I want people to come on and talk about their teams and talk about what they see in football, in world football. I definitely want some WSL fans on, some women's football fans, because, the sad state of women's football is I don't actually have anybody to talk to women's football about because nobody else I know likes women's football. And I'm a big fan of sport. In the same way you heard me go on for 5 minutes about, UFC, I can do the same thing about any other MMA fighting organization. I can do that about any other football league, be it Spain, Italy, be it women's football. So, if you do like women's football and you've got something to say, please get in touch and you can come on the pod. So next time we do this, I assume Chris will be with us to give us his views. And in that case, I'm going to really have to think about how we are going to keep this short and brief. But for the first time ever, we've done it under an hour. So thank you very much, Mr. Gravy.
Peace.
And we're going to end it there. Let us know what you think of our first spin-off podcast. Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Uh-oh.